What's up, everybody? It's the Poppin' Tea Podcast here with your host, Poppin' Tea. As usual, Poppin' Tea. Pop, what tea you got for us today, man?
So the tea for today is that Dan Quinn, the new head coach of the Washington Commanders, announced that Eric Bieniemy will not be back with the organization. This is very interesting news to me. Eric Bieniemy is a guy that has been in the head coaching conversations for a very long time and just has never seemed to be able to secure that job. And this year just ended up being one of those seasons that you didn't really hear much about Eric Bieniemy. And I know he wasn't on such a great team, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on the whole Eric Bieniemy situation and how this year affects his future.
It's definitely an interesting situation. Like you said, Bieniemy is one of those guys that's always been in the coaching cycle, especially for what he was able to do over there in Kansas City with Mahomes and the success that offense had. Sam Howell showed flashes here and there. He definitely had games that were good. He had some bad. He finished throwing 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, and almost 4,000 yards. So, the offense was moving the ball, turnovers. But that might mean, it's time for a new change in Washington. They might be moving on to quarterback position this draft. And I think that's the main thing that kind of highlights is that Dan Quinn is coming in with his own staff, his own ideals. He might come in there with his own quarterback. He said, quote unquote, we're not going to work together here. But he respects him and he wished nothing but the best for him. So it doesn't seem like it ended on bad terms over there. It just sounds like, it's his organization now. He wants to do what he wants to do over there. And that kind of takes us in to the focus of today. I kind of want to talk about the draft, some free agents, and get this offseason rolling. So, Pop, the Commanders have, I believe, the number 2 pick in the draft. Would I be right in saying that? Yeah, the number 2 pick in the draft. What are you thinking there for them? Obviously, I know we're supposed to start at 1, but let's just start with the Commanders for now, with the new coaching hire.
Well, what I think is actually going to happen with all the drama surrounding Cliff Kingsbury this offseason, little English mishap there. I think that him holding out on the Raiders and switching over to the Commanders, that tells me that the Commanders might be looking to move up to 1 to grab Caleb Williams.
100%.
Cliff was at USC this last season after losing his job with the Cardinals, and that shows a big billboard to me that we want Caleb Williams to come to Washington, D.C. It's where he's from. It sounds like he doesn't have a lot of trust for the Bears organization, and I could definitely see it happening. It reminds me a lot of when the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett to try and get Aaron Rodgers over to Denver. Yeah. It's just a very similar hire to try and lure a top quarterback to your team. So I could definitely see them trading up, but I'm certain that there's going to be a quarterback drafted to that team, either at 1 or 2.
Yeah. So do you think that with that move, do you think the Bears will be willing to trade down again like they did last year with Bryce? Do you see them maybe giving that pick up and trying to get picks in return, or do you see them taking like a Marvin Harrison there at 1?
No, I definitely see them I can see it just being a trade down to 2. Mm-hmm. Just grabbing some more picks, trying to build up this roster a little bit more. And maybe they like Drake May a little bit better, and maybe there's already talks about them liking Drake May better. I think that with the Justin Fields situation, everything points to the fact that they should move on. You're going to have to pay Justin Fields, which is going to be more expensive than a rookie quarterback. Justin Fields has not shown you much as a passer his entire career, even when putting other weapons around him. You are getting more picks by trading Justin Fields. There's no reason to hang on to Justin Fields besides nostalgia and the fact that he has hypothetical upside. And so do the top quarterback prospects in this draft. To me, there's a higher chance of Caleb Williams or Drake May being a top 10 guy than Justin Fields ever being a top 10 guy.
Wow, that's a hot take there.
So if I'm the Bears, I'm taking a quarterback as well because there's so many reasons to take a quarterback instead of trying to run it back with Justin Fields.
Now, I will say that DJ Moore did have his best statistical season of his career. 96 receptions, 1,364 yards, and 8 touchdowns. What would you think about pairing a guy like that with Harrison and keeping Fields for a year rental, and maybe double dipping next year back in the draft? Or are you just completely ready to move on from Fields in Chicago?
I mean, we've seen that Chicago is a middle-of-the-road franchise right now with the current roster construction, the current coaching staff. You add Marvin Harrison to that, maybe you get one more win, maybe you make a wild card game, but you're never going to have this pick again with the current roster if you keep Justin Fields. So if you want your opportunity to really reach for the stars, grab your superstar, this is the opportunity to do it. Marvin Harrison sounds great. Marvin Harrison is one of the better wide receiver prospects I've ever seen. But these quarterbacks are up there as well. And
definitely.
I think it would be foolish to not grab one of them with that top pick. And to add on to that, you have pick 9. And this is a stacked wide receiver class as well. Go get a quarterback at 1 and draft one of the Aromo Dunze, a Malik Neighbors. Go draft one of them at 9. And then you have DJ Moore and Malik Neighbors, who a lot of people are saying is, if it's any other draft class, he's going as the number 1 receiver without Marvin Harrison in it. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It's never made sense to me to keep Justin Fields.
I'm actually
and
on the
I don't
other
even
side
think
of
he's
that.
Really?
Yeah, I actually am.
That's crazy.
I'm on the other side of the Fields argument with this one. But go ahead and continue, and then I'll get into my points on that.
I don't even think Justin Fields is that bad. That's the last thing I want to say. I do think he showed a lot of improvement this season.
Yeah.
But it's the outside reasons of just comparing the two quarterbacks to me that you go draft another quarterback, because it's the contract too. It's like, would you really rather pay Justin Fields with a question mark at his upside after 3 or 4 years, or would you rather roll the dice again with guys that are considered generational? At least Caleb Williams is considered generational, and a lot of people think that Drake May has the chance to get drafted at 1 as well. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. But quarterback is one of those positions that's it's so important in the league. And it's one of those where your job can be on the line if you miss a prospect like Caleb Williams. So the pressure is definitely on to kind of make the right decision over there. But the Bears have a lot of money, cap space wise. They have $46 million this offseason to kind of play around with and spend money with. A lot of that is likely to go to Jalen Johnson. But it's kind of one of those where you have 1 and 9, you have a quarterback on a rookie deal at the moment. And you have some. This is a very loaded draft class, in my opinion. So it's to me, you could have the opportunity to trade down once again, like you did last year. The Commanders behind you at 2, they need a quarterback, and the Pats are behind you at 3, they need a quarterback. So you might even be able to trade down with the Pats and still get your quarterback. It just may not be. It may not be Caleb. I think Jaden Daniels had a hell of a season. I wish he didn't, end up getting injured in the end, but he threw 40 touchdowns, 40 interceptions. He'll be there at 3. If you trade back, you let Caleb and Drake fall 1 and 2. So then you get more stock, and then you can double dip, like you said, as a wide receiver at 9. and now you're kind of cooking with some grease because now you have Justin Fields, you have a potential backup if Justin doesn't play out, you have a wide receiver or a tackle that you can get at 9, and then you just stacked up on draft capital. So I don't think they necessarily need to take a quarterback at 1, but like obviously if you miss on Caleb and both Drake, they both hit. Like somebody's job is on the line. So I definitely think it's an interesting situation. But I kind of would want them kind of stick it out one more year with Fields and just see what happens. So we talked about the Bears, their situation. Touched on the Commanders a little bit. We both know that's a quarterback coming, 100%. The Patriots, no Belichick. What are you thinking? You thinking quarterback there?
To me, absolutely not. I would not by any means drop a quarterback into the current roster that's existing right now.
Okay, I get that.
I think that this is one of the worst rosters I've seen in a while. And a lot of people will be like, well, look at what the Texans did. They've been building that roster in Houston for the last 3 years.
Since the Deshaun trade. There's no weapons. The offensive line is a mess. You got an old defense with no true superstars. And guess what? Bill Belichick's not running that defense anymore. And you really want to drop a quarterback in there just to end up like Bryce Young? Yeah.
And Bryce Young was a hyped-up prospect. You're getting the third best quarterback prospect in New England. To me, I'm dropping in Marvin Harrison right there. I'm taking him. I'm taking this star weapon. And I'm expecting to get another high draft pick in the next year's draft. Because with no quarterback, you're still going to struggle even though you have Marvin Harrison. So if you can just grab this superstar and hope that next year you end up with one of those high draft picks or you trade up, that's my ideal play for the Patriots. I would not drop Jaden Daniels into this roster by any means.
That would be terrible for him in his future.
Definitely.
I like that. We'll come back to the Patriots later when we start talking about free agents because I like that idea. Let's move on to 4 with the Cardinals. That's one of those situations where I kind of feel like it's the Patriots. Like I don't think the roster is as bad, but like that's going to be a bad team, I think, for a while. What are you thinking that they should do at 4 to kind of improve their roster?
See, the Cardinals, I was thinking about this earlier today. They are the most confusing team to me because you can go a variety of different questions. To me, Kyler Murray played the Cardinals out of drafting a quarterback. If Kyler Murray came back halfway through the season and they didn't win any more games and they were sitting there at 1, I'd be like, okay, well, Kyler couldn't get anything done. Maybe it's time to draft a quarterback and figure it out. Yep. But Kyler effectively outplayed their hand in doing that. So, to me, it's either wide receiver or tackle here. Those are the premium positions in this draft besides quarterback. I guess you could take a defensive player, but I don't know if there's one that I'm taking this high. So, to me, it's Joe Alt, the physical specimen, great pass protector, great run blocker, or Olufashanu, the Penn State tackle.
I like that.
Someone who's been hyped up the last 2 years as the top tackle in the draft, or Malik Neighbors, who I touched on before as being one of these wide receivers that any other year he might be going as the first wide receiver off the board. Give Kyler another weapon, because you don't even know if they're going to hold on to Hollywood. I think they should. Have Malik Neighbors be your true X. Have Hollywood be that speed threat, and then Rondale Moore in the slot as your gadget player. That's a good receiving core to me. So I think you go either direction. If you get that tackle, you got bookends, Paris Johnson, and whatever tackle you like the best in that position. Or you build out the receiving core, and Kyler's set on that for the next couple of years. What are you feeling?
Kind of with you. I think they have to go tackle there. Like you paid Kyler Murray what you paid him. You gotta protect your investment. Obviously, it's not the pretty pick. It's not the flashy pick. But I would like them see go Joe Alt there, and just protect his left side. Another one I kind of like Brock Bowers there. I know they have Trey McBride, but I believe that a tight end can really open your offense up. When you can attack the outside and both the inside from multiple positions, you have a guy that he can block, he can line up in the slot, he can line up outside, he can line up at tight end, and you can still play Trey McBride also with him, keeping Hollywood on that roster and just keeping all those weapons out there. But Malik Neighbors I think that'll also be a great pick. So for them, I think it's really between tackle, wide receiver, and Brock Bowers. Just kind of, I feel like they're one of those situations where it's kind of like whatever's the best available at that point. Is kind of who they should focus on. After that, the next pick is the Chargers. New head coach. They're in cap hell right now. I think they're minus. Let me look. I don't want to say a false number. They're minus $45 million in the cap right now. A lot of aging players, a lot of contracts to get figured out. What are you thinking to kind of best help Justin Herbert move forward next year?
Well, for the Chargers, I feel like you could look at any position as a position of need. You got a lot of aging guys, you got a lot of guys on big contracts, and it's time to add some youth anywhere you can find it. Brock Bowers, I've seen a lot of talk about him at 5, which I really like, especially with Gerald Everett being a free agent this offseason. Just adding that middle of the field target to really open up that middle of the field for Justin Herbert. I love that pick there. Tackle, why not add another bookend to protect your already paid star quarterback?
100%.
And you know Jim Harbaugh is going to want to run the ball, so why not add someone else up front to make that run game even better? And then any defensive player, really. I don't know what they're going to end up doing with these defensive ends. They're making a lot of money. And for Joey Bosa, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and both of them aren't getting any younger. So maybe you add a Dallas Turner or any corner, because that secondary was really picked apart all season. So
Yeah.
you can really go any route. If I was the Chargers, I'm taking probably a tackle because these guys are some of the best. But you could really talk me into Brock Bowers as well.
Yeah, I like that. I think you touched on it for a second. I think I'm kind of going the defensive back route for the Chargers. That secondary, like you said, got picked apart last year. I think this is a semi-deep corner class. I think there are a lot of guys in the first round that could be potential, hit pick starters. Obviously, any guy picked in the first round is expected to be a starter, but a guy that can really step up and make a difference. I'm kind of a Kool-Aid fan. McKinstry out of
How can you not
Alabama. Yeah, it's very easy to
How
be
can you not be?
a Kool-Aid fan. I thought he had a good year. He has a nice size, 6'1", 195 frame. Only allowed 205 yards in coverage this year. I think that could be a good pick for them to go out there day one and for him to go out there and make a difference. But we'll take that. We'll kind of just stay with the top 5 picks for today and kind of move on every time we get back on and talk about it. So let's just to go back through it. You're thinking Bears quarterback, Commanders quarterback, Patriots wide receiver, Cardinals tackle, and Chargers tackle. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, I would go either tackle or tight end for the Chargers.
I like that. Big money positions right there. Guys that they're definitely going to have to pay in 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's always crazy to see guys their rookie contracts, and then to see that next contract on top of that. Like I think Aiden Hutchinson has like a $30 million guarantee in like his rookie contract, and just to think what he's going to get paid in 5 years is going to be insane.
It's probably going to be that in 1 year.
Yeah, honestly, like the city of Detroit isn't going to let him leave. But I'm getting off topic. Let's talk about some free agents. This is a year where there are a lot of quality free agents, a lot of quality unrestricted free agents this year. The cap was around 224 million last year. It's expected to go up. Just to start with, who I think is the best guy available at the moment, defensive tackle Chris Jones. What are you expecting to see from the Chiefs, kind of in their negotiations between him and L'Jarius Sneed, both being unrestricted free agents? And if they can't resign him, what are you thinking? Where are you thinking he might go, or who can use him?
If I'm the Chiefs, I'm picking Chris Jones if I have to take one or the other. You have Trent McDuffie as a star corner, an all-pro guy this season. And they're sitting at about 28 million cap room. And if you just look at some of the top DT contracts, you got Aaron Donald making 31, which is not... There's a big gap between 1 and 2, with Quinnen Williams at 24 million. So I would expect Chris Jones to want in between those two. I think it'd be unrealistic for him to expect to make Aaron Donald money because
I think he wants that Aaron Donald money.
I think it's unrealistic.
I think that's what he wants, man. To be completely honest, I think he's looking for that 30 mil a year contract. I think he thinks he's the best. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think there's going to be any hometown settlement with the Chiefs and him cutting a deal with them. I think he's going to want those big bucks.
Well, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm finding a way to get the deal done. I don't know if they'll be able to do it if he wants that much money, but I'm doing everything that I possibly can to get that done. But I'm keeping one of those players. If he left, that's a tough question. I think there's a lot of young teams that have a lot of money and could be looking to get a star D tackle on their roster. Just looking at some of the top salary cap teams, I know the Texans would love a player like that. The Bengals would love a player like that, especially after probably losing DJ Reader.
100%.
And if I had to guess, it's the Texans or the Cardinals. Because the Cardinals are lacking in that front seven, and they got to add someone. With all the edge rushers and DTs about to hit the market, got to add someone.
Yeah.
And why not add the best?
I agree with that. So I'm just looking on sporttrack.com. They're projecting him to make a salary of about $28.4 million a year, which would put him second, obviously, behind Aaron Donald. And that's a lot of money to pay a D tackle, but obviously he's worth the money. I'm kind of with you with the Texans. That's kind of my number one team for him. They have about 70 million cap space. I think they have a very young, a very exciting team, especially on defense. D'Amico Ryan's doing a lot of great things over there. I think that would be that push, that might put them above. Chris Jones on that defense might help them beat a Baltimore in the playoffs. We live in a league where the quarterback is obviously the most important position, and teams have to find a way to build to stop the quarterback. So I think Chris Jones, playing next to Will Anderson Jr., Derek Barnett.
That'd be scary.
I'm forgetting the guy. They just had a 12-sack guy. I can't remember his name at the moment.
John Grenard.
Yeah, Grenard. Yeah, that would be a disgusting D line, and it would just give more time for CJ on offense. Another guy who's a free agent this year, my number 2 on my list is Kirk Cousins, agent quarterback.
Kirko Chains.
He'll be 35 this season, coming off a Achilles tear. What are you predicting for him this free agency?
If I was Kirk Cousins, I am looking at the Vikings or the Falcons, and I'm making them bid for me. I'm not going anywhere else. To me, the Vikings, he's familiar with it. He's got his number 1, the best wide receiver in football, Justin Jefferson. He's got a great play caller. Or I'm looking at the Falcons with as much young talent on that roster, a roster that's on the come up on both sides of the ball. I am looking at those two teams and I'm saying, whoever makes the best offer for me, I will go and play quarterback for you next season. He doesn't have that many years left, so why would you waste these valuable years in the last couple years of your prime playing for a New England or something? I wouldn't do it. I
Yeah.
would look at those two teams that I mentioned and I would say, show me the money.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm a big fan of him going to the Falcons. Like you said, it's a young, promising core over there. You got Drake London, you got Kyle Pitts, and you got Bijan Robinson to work with. I think that can make for an electric offense. I think in the NFC South, obviously the NFC South is wide open. I think they could win that in their first year with Kirk at quarterback. Another team where I might like to see him play would be the Raiders. They don't have as much cap space as necessary maybe to sign Kirk Cousins. They're about 36 mil right now. But I think with a new staff, a new culture coming in over there, obviously you'd be playing Pat Mahomes twice a year. You'd be playing Justin Herbert twice a year. But I think there's enough weapons around there for Kirk's change to get it done. I just think that would be. I think it would be cool to see him play in the silver and black. Honestly, I couldn't imagine the post games with him in the silver and black and the chains. Like you just know it's going to follow him wherever he goes.
Yeah.
And I think in the Raiders jersey, I think that would be a great sight to see. My number 3 defensive end, Josh Allen. Not that Josh Allen, but the one that plays for Jags. He's a free agent coming up this season. What are you expecting to see from him?
To me, this is the Jags have got to find a way to get him back on the roster. This is a guy that has gotten consistently better every single season he's played in the NFL. And there were so many games this season where Josh Allen was taking over on that D-line. He was the sole reason why they were getting pressure and the sole reason they were getting off the field. And for a guy that's consistently gotten better every season, who knows, he might take the next step and get even better and really cement himself in that elite pass rusher conversation. Because he was in that conversation this year.
Yeah,
He was up there in pressures. He was up there in sacks with your Myles Garrett's of the world, your Michael Parsons of the world, your T.J. Watts of the world, your Max Crosby's. Why would you
17 and a
let a
half.
guy? Why would you let a guy like that walk away? So the Jags have got to find a way to get him done, especially a team like the Jags. I know we're going to touch on Brian Burns later. Brian Burns, to me, is not as good as Josh Allen on a not as good team. The Jags are eyeing success. They're not in a rebuild right now. You got
They're
to
very
keep
close.
your best defensive player on the roster if you want to make that leap and hopefully get a Super Bowl in Jacksonville. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Bring him back.
Yeah, it'd be hard to let him leave that door. But like a lot of teams, the Jags don't have too much cap space. They only have about $15 million going into this offseason. And I believe Calvin Ridley is also an unrestricted free agent. And just
Get
with having
Calvin
to,
out of there.
yeah, he's going for sure. Having to play T. Law soon, I don't know if they'll be able to get this one done. You would have to, in my eyes, you'd have to throw the bank at Josh. He'd at least be making 20 mil. He's a premier pass rusher this league, like you said. He played 85% of the snaps defensively, had 17 and a half sacks, 66 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and interception to go along with that. We talked on an earlier team that needs help defensively. I think the Cardinals should go get him. If I'm the Cardinals, I'm throwing whatever I can at Josh Allen to come get him to sign. If he wants the entire state of Arizona, he can have it. But you got to find a way to get a premier edge rusher on that team. Fourth on my list, wide receiver, is a dog. That boy T. Higgins over there in Cincinnati. What do you think he ends up this offseason?
I think there's a couple different options. teams that I'm looking at, the Patriots, if they do end up going quarterback at pick 3, I think that'd be a great place for him to end up.
Shoot, even if they go wide receiver at pick 3, I think they could still use him.
Yeah,
Offense, terrible.
terrible. And then the Panthers, I think that getting Bryce Young a premier weapon is absolutely necessary. You cannot go into next season with the wide receiver core looking anything like it did this year.
Yeah, not at all.
And the Jags as well, you got to put weapons around your star quarterback. I know we said that they're lacking for money, but if you can't get the deal done with Josh Allen, then you still got to try and make a splash. Like I said, this team is one that is eyeing the Super Bowl, and you cannot be content with the season you just had. You got to go out and make big moves to try and take the next step. And whether that's keeping Josh Allen and continuing to build, or grabbing T. Higgins, giving your quarterback a real outside target, I think that is crucial for the Jags.
Yeah, I'm on board with you, T. Higgins. When it comes to the Panthers, I think, like you said, it's very essential. I think the number one thing over there in Carolina is to get him offensive line help, and the second is to get him weapons. And I think T. Higgins would be a great big body wide receiver that you could put outside, and you could let him play over there. I think the Colts would also be interesting. I know they already have Pittman over there. I know they have Alec Pierce over there. But they have $62 million in cap space. And you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. I know Anthony Richardson is coming off an injury. But I'm a big supporter of putting weapons around young quarterbacks. And that falls in line for both Ant Richardson and Bryce Young. So I'd love to see him end up in Indianapolis or Carolina. And last on our free agency we'll touch on today is defensive end Brian Burns. You hinted on it a little earlier, but what are you thinking for him this offseason?
Well, to me, it's tough because this team is in shambles, and you don't know what the next couple of years are going to look like. All I do know is you have to get some sort of return out of your top pick, because Brian Burns is an excellent player, one of the quickest pass rushers I've ever seen. I think you either give him the contract or you tag and trade the guy, because you can't just let this guy walk out the door when he's a top 3 player on your roster. It would be completely dumb to let him walk out the door. So if I was the Panthers, I'd tag and trade, just because it doesn't seem like Brian Burns really wants to be there that much, and I don't know if it really fits in the timeline for you to give him a giant contract when you really, really need to rebuild and inject some youth into your roster. So I would tag and trade him at the deadline next year, but if not, I'm giving him the contract and wiping my hands clean, saying, "All right, we got one good player signed. Now let's build from there."
Yeah, I don't think you can let him walk. Like how you felt about Josh Allen leaving Jacksonville, I feel that way about Brian leaving Carolina. I know the teams are obviously in two completely different situations. But after trading away so many picks to get the number one to draft Bryce, there's not to say there's no rebuilding through the draft, but like if you got something in house, you just can't let it leave. I think he's on track to make 20 plus a year. Probably 5-year, $100 million contract and some change. But with him on that D line, and Brown such a forced interior, I just don't think you can let that duo kind of split up. You can't. Obviously, you can have one without the other, but I think it would be foolish to have one without the other. So I think Carolina has to do anything they can to keep him in house, while also finding ways to win throughout free agency. I think that this will be a huge free agency for Carolina. Just because of how many draft picks they lost last season, I think they have to spend their money they have. There's no being conservative right now. This is a win now league. We saw that with the Rams completely giving all they had to get Stafford over there. And I think the Panthers have to follow the same the same plan. You can't waste your quarterback's rookie contract. I watched so many teams do that because once you have to pay your quarterback, it becomes hell. You can see with the Chiefs happening now. They lost Tyreek, and now you got to choose between Chris Jones and Snead. The Bills are in cap hell right now because of how much they're paying Josh Allen. And the Chargers are in cap hell because how much they're paying guys, and now they're paying the quarterback on top of that. And the Ravens are starting to get into that alley of struggling because of how much they're paying their quarterback. So I believe in getting free agents when you can. I think that's a guy that they really need to go get. Well, not get, but keep in house this offseason. Getting towards the end of the episode, is there any free agent just off the top of your mind that you're like, man, I would love to see him in this uniform? Doesn't have to be a top guy, just anybody, just comes off the mind.
I would love to see Patrick Queen play on the Seahawks. We've talked about this before, but that linebacker duo under Mike McDonald would be crazy.
Just makes too much sense.
And I wouldn't love to see this one, but I think it would be a very good fit. As the Bengals are probably going to lose DJ Reader, like I mentioned before. You probably can't afford to go pay Chris Jones, especially with Jamar Chase right around the corner, having to pay him. Why not go get Christian Wilkins? A guy that maybe adds a little bit more pass rush to that D-line than DJ Reader did. He's not as good of a run defender, but he's a very good run defender, so why not make that D-line even better and add a guy like Christian Wilkins? I think that would be a very good fit.
I like that. The guy for me, Calvin Ridley, I'd love to see him on the Texans. Just give the young guy weapons. You'll hear me say it 1,000 times, and I'll continue to say it. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. He's always been a top guy in the league. We know who he is. We've seen his product. Go put him down there with Collins, Brown, and Dell, and just allow CJ to flourish. And I also love to see Stephon Gilmore on the Lions. The Cowboys won't be able to play a lot of guys this offseason. With all the young talent they have to extend. And I think we both could agree that the Lions secondary could use some help. So I think that's a guy that could go in there and play for Aaron Glenn immediately, and I think it'd be a big difference maker for that team. That's about all for today, Pop. Is there anything that I missed that you want to touch on, anything like that?
No, I just wanted to highlight that this is kind of our plan for this offseason. We're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of talking about the draft, talking about how we would build these teams and what steps we would take if we were running these different franchises in more depth. And I'm just really excited to see how this offseason plays out and see what kind of moves these rosters make.
100%. I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what happens with those first 3 picks because it's like everybody kind of needs the same thing. And there's one guy that obviously everybody wants above the others, and Caleb Williams. So I'm kind of interested in to see how those teams attack the draft, if there are any trades. And just another season of football, obviously. How could you not be excited for it? So, yeah, I think that's all from us today.
Catch us next week as we recap the Super Bowl and talk a little bit more off-season.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's a wrap.